We are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria. I'll be moderating today's sessions. Probably you know me already from the platform engineering webinars that we have every week, but today is a very special event. We are going to have our first warm-up party for a PlatformCon event that's happening. Is going to happen in 3 weeks, June 8th, June 9th. If you haven't registered just yet, please do so. Also, if you are not a part of the platform engineering community, here's the link that you can join just now. Just join Slack. And that's it. You can ask questions from our speakers from today's warm-up event in Slack, because this webinar was recorded before and it's being streamed online just now. Hope you like it. Let's get started.
This is TechStrong TV.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this really special event. We're talking about PlatformCon, what is happening, what's hot in platform engineering. And we have some very special folks here talking about the conference and the event. PlatformCon is happening on June 8th and 9th. You can go to platformcon.com/register to register for the event, find out more information, check out the agenda, all the great things that's going to be part of that. My name is Mitch Ashley. I'm CTO with TechStrong Group, the folks that are helping put on this video. And we're going to be kind of doing a little bit of a warm-up event here. And we're talking about some of the topics that are happening at the conference, some things that we're excited about, talking about, maybe you want to learn more about. You know, we're bringing our own expertise and experiences, but we're also coming to PlatformCon to learn from other people too. So we have a great panel together. I'm going to ask each of the folks to introduce themselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about what do we mean by platform engineering, if that's a relatively new topic, and we'll kind of dive into it from there. So great. I'm happy to have our panelists introduce themselves. Susa, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Nice to meet you guys. I'm happy to be here. So yeah, my name is Susa. I'm a product manager at Humanitec. Among other things, I'm involved with the developer experience aspect. So essentially trying to get to the bottom of pain points and bottlenecks that developers face in their day-to-day work. And of course, also as part of that, exploring ways of reducing friction along the application delivery lifecycle. So that's my main focus at the moment.
Fantastic. Developer experience. What a great topic title, et cetera. So very cool. Good to be talking with you. Hey, Brian, how about yourself? Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So Brian Douglas, on the internet, I go by BDougie on places like GitHub and Twitter. And most recently spent 5 years working at GitHub, helping with their developer experience and developer relations as well. And then back in September, started running my own company called Open Sauce, which we're providing business intelligence into open source software. And my talk is actually around this getting to release as fast as possible. So CI/CD has had a lot of evolution in the last few years, and I've come to become a consumer of all this evolution, and mostly a front-end JavaScript developer. But when I need to choose a platform to help get releases cut, always looking to learn knowledge, but also share my experience, which is, I wouldn't say expertise. I just happen to be a great consumer.
It's nice when you're speaking from practical experience as well as knowledge, right? Which I think all of us bring to the table. Very cool. All right, Jay, last but not least, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Mitch. I am Jay. I'm from India. Currently working as a software engineer at Razorpay. We cater as one of the largest payment gateway, the leading payment gateway in India. I work for the platform team, and basically what we do over here is to manage the API gateway for Razorpay. We have our own sort of a customized API gateway on which we do our tooling on. And my talk for PlatformCon is based on similar topic, like how we are managing the edge at Razorpay. So really excited to be here. Eager to learn from all of you. Thanks.
Fantastic. Susa, I don't know if you mentioned what your talk was about. Did you?
I didn't actually. My talk is about configuration drift and how to eliminate it. So that is kind of the problem space I'm diving into. And as part of that, I'm also touching on SCORE, which is an open source project that aims to eliminate that exact problem.
Configuration drift. Who has not had that problem? Okay.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, so platform engineering maybe is a relatively new term to folks. It's something, we've been talked a lot more about in the last, couple of years. Gartner kind of defines it as this idea of, a set of tools, capabilities, processes that really helps. I think of it as developer productivity and kind of reduce, get back to the core of how do we support our developers and their productivity and the technologies that they use, because things like DevOps and cloud and everything, we have a lot of people involved in our software processes now, and platform engineering kind of brings that focus there. The first PlatformCon, I guess, happened in 2022, June, and at the time we were thinking about Puppet, the field CTO, Kirsten, kind of got the community, urged them to come up with sort of a descriptive model of what platform engineering really entails. And I'm curious about your thoughts on platform engineering definition. It's like everything, there's multiple definitions, right? There's rarely one definition to rule them all. But how would you put some terms around it? We'll kind of use it as our working definition. Do you want to jump in first, Jay?
Sure thing, yeah. But I on to begin with, like, I totally agree with you, right? Like, there is no definitive sort of description around if we can define platform engineering into one or two sentences, right? It varies on the use case that we have on day-to-day basis, right? I would like to just quickly give an example. Let's say there can be emerging startups or companies, right, where they have simple sort of their OKRs and structure defined, and they have fairly using any sort of product for the tooling. On the other hand, there are large organizations having, like fairly large size of developers. At the end, according to me, what I would see platform engineering working for both of these cases would be like to create a set of reusable tools, or let's say services and infrastructure, which at the end of the day help developers to build and deploy applications more quickly and efficiently. That is what, according to me, platform engineering majorly lies about, and that is what we also try to work and cater for the teams that over here at Razorpay.
Makes a lot of sense to me. A good perspective to take too. How about you, Susa?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with that. It's similar to other terms like DevOps, for example, right? Like if you Google it, there's just so many definitions and articles you can read into. In terms of the definition that I usually go by, I'm of course also a little bit biased coming from Humanitec. We typically describe it as kind of the discipline of designing and building internal developer platforms. So that contains tool chains or workflows that essentially enable self-service for software engineering organizations and specifically also developers, which is quite a high level definition. But as you mentioned, Jay, once you dive deeper, it's kind of dependent on the use case. So I feel like to get a basic understanding, it is quite helpful to keep it as high level.
Yeah, and Mitch, if I could jump in too, I imagine you're probably going to go to me next.
You read the room right.
Yeah. So I mean, I've professionally been coding for about almost 10 years. I've been copying and pasting code for longer than that, but always been able to solve a problem in code. And when I started working professionally, I didn't know, all these pipelines and servers and how to orchestrate that. And my career's benefited from platforms and using tools where I could just focus on writing the Ruby, JavaScript, Python code I need to get the job done and not worry about how to orchestrate an entire platform. So we've all touched on this, and you'd mentioned, getting us back to, as developers, get developers back to doing what they do best is how I would describe this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just my own mental model of this is kind of remember thinking of the world as the IDE and all the plugins and everything that I can access through my IDE, whatever your favorite or favorites are, right, in the languages that you're using. And today's world, that plugs into a whole tool chain, workflow, platforms that we're doing development on, maybe different deployment environments. We're doing this in the cloud, doing it on our computer. We're multiple things, right? And we have requirements documents and GitHubs that help set up our environment. Poof, we're ready to work and go. It's really amazing to me how more productive we can be today with the tools and capabilities we have. But it also can be really daunting if you're like stepping in and that's not just set up for you to go. I mean, is that anybody else have that experience too? Jump in.
Yeah, it was the same for me. I mean, shortly after my studies, I worked as a JavaScript developer as well. In our team, we had more of the issue of like classic siloing. So I had absolutely no clue what was going on when it came to actually deploying my code. Not great either. So I feel like bridging the gap there and like making that part accessible. So in terms that I can like self-service and understand what's going on, because when something broke, back then I was absolutely lost. So, I mean, we know that siloing is also not the way to go in terms of just throwing code over the wall, but kind of like passing it through the fence is, I think, what platform engineering is aiming to do.
Yeah, I was going to say that I've got a lot of friends who went to school in Canada, and when you're an engineer in Canada, you get the sort of special ring, and like a lot of folks already know about the story about engineering in Canada and the bridge that fell down, but like that symbolism of the ring, which is like a part of that bridge that fell down, it's like to remember, oh yeah, this is why we do this today. Like we don't have to understand how bridges work or how pipelines work or how servers work, but just note that someone solved this before you. And that's what I see as far as like, again, going back to my story, I just want to ship some code that I know is going to work. I don't know how it gets to the cloud or how the cloud works. But I do know that there's a platform that's going to be supporting me, but also the next engineer, the junior engineer on the team. They're going to figure this out without needing to know every single intonation of how this works.
Yeah, I mean, we'll agree with Brian on some points, but just one point where I would like to beg to differ is that even though there is a lot of toolings available, or let's say we have a use case, we Google it out or we check out like what are the tools available for the same. Not knowing the internals can backfire on the problems itself. Let's say previously while I was working at a different firm, we had to, sort of an on-prem deployment. That strategy I cannot, sort of utilize on the setup that we have now. So whereas, as I've said earlier, it varies on use case to use case. So it is good to know not at least the entire, sort of internal structure of the tooling that is available, but if we have the gist of what needs to be used when, should be really helpful with the products that are available right now in the market.
Yeah, and I would say that we might be saying the same thing too as well. Like, I think when there's a team and a structure, like there's definitely no I in team, but there's a me, but there's us. And like, if there's someone on the team that can transfer that knowledge through documentation and like really good guides, then we could all now solve harder problems. And that's more my statement is like, I agree. You should know what you're using, but we should also like document and be able to move forward and solve, I guess, whatever comes after AI.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what, the concept of flow comes to mind too, right? It's keeping ourselves in the groove. I mean, it takes a lot of work to context shift, to get ourselves that cognitive load of getting back into the headspace of what we were working on, and we're maybe in halfway through understanding it or writing it or whatever. And those disruptions to that, I mean, they have a big impact, and people who are not writing software don't always appreciate it. They may have their own challenges that way, but at least for me, you really dive into it, mentally, and you got to have your head in there. So in a way, platform engineering is increasing flow, helping people do what they do well, spending their mental cycles working on those things. And probably along with that, and this is something I think you mentioned, Brian, is we're software people, so we also write things to make things better for ourselves, right? Which is part of our own world, and platform engineering seems to me encompasses providing that environment, as well as helping us improve it over time. What do you think of as tools? I mean, there are literally thousands of people that will be part of PlatformCon again this year, will be part of the live stream. And kind of like, in the DevOps world or SRE world or platform engineering, there's no one tool that says, this is, if you got this and plug this into your IDE, you got platform engineering. But how would you put some ideas around what are some of the capabilities that you can use through tools, open source, commercial, cloud, others? You want to start first, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, so my talk it's focused around, it's not meant to be a product talk. I just happen to have a lot of experience in GitHub Actions. And I see that tool as like a base layer. Like it's a great way to get started, but it's not the end all. Like there's now a lot of good evolutions of CI/CD where like continuous integrations, it's a bit commoditized now. So I'm seeing tools like Dagger, which gives you a better local environment to test your CI/CD pipeline if you choose to use GitHub Actions or Jenkins or anything else, and that flexibility to be able to say, okay, well, it works on my machine, but also works on this cloud and it works on this server, and like you could repeat that experience. Is again like I hark on this one notion of like I remember 2 jobs ago, I sat down and someone showed me what Docker was, and they showed me how that touches Kubernetes and this is how we get stuff deployed. And it was just the intro first day on the job, and I never had to look at it again. I just knew it worked. And that's what I love about like just figure out the sort of base layer tools so that way we can go reach for a Dagger. Or there's a new tool called Cicada, similar to Dagger. You can write Rust or whatever language you want, and it converts into WebAssembly to build out your pipeline yourself. So that way the next person doesn't have to worry about all the ins and outs.
WebAssembly, a very cool thing about runtime environment. Speaking of your Java background, right? Sort of the next evolution of maybe that idea for distributed environments. Jay, jump in. I'm curious. When you think of kind of tools and the things involved in a platform engineering environment, what comes to mind?
Yeah. So first thing that comes to mind is definitely something like that enhances developer productivity, right? With the increase in the number of developers across organizations working on different microservices, right? As we look at the architecture systems, right? Every developer has its own set of requirement, needs a different deployment architecture, something like that. So the toolings around, Gitpod or something like that, where we can have our own micro setup or micro Kubernetes setup that is just there, that replicates the prod environment and helps us out to test the things, as well as, enhances the confidence of the developer before any sort of deployment. That is one of the great advancements that I do see in the field of platform engineering, and that is helping us out every day while we are shipping code multiple times a day to production. So yeah, that is one of the things that I do look forward to, looking out to some of the interesting talks around the same in the PlatformCon.
Very nice. Susa, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think those are all great points. I mean, when it comes to tools, I think 2 big areas are definitely configuration management and ensuring like a standardized approach when it comes to that. That also touches on what I'll be talking about, right? Like you don't only have different configuration per environment, like you want different database credentials to be injected on development, staging, and production, but you also have different tech and tools you work with, right? You might be using Docker locally, and then you deploy to Kubernetes with Helm, for example. I think having tools kind of focus on the developer experience here and understanding that like using all of these tools can be quite complicated, and building these abstraction layers is definitely a trend that we're seeing. I mean, the backlash there is that people might feel abstracted. So it's like abstracting without feeling abstracted, and finding like the right level there is, I think, what we have to figure out, right? So that again, the complexity is compartmentalized in a way that things are actually accessible to everyone while maintaining that flow that you mentioned before. So yeah, I think that we're seeing like those things emerge across the board. Also a lot of movement in the open source community. An example is Score, which I'll also be talking about, which aims to do that, put the developer experience first when navigating this like jungle of tooling that teams often work with. And yeah, I think those are the focus areas when it comes to actually wanting to adopt according tooling.
And people have different, what they enjoy doing. Some of us like, I'm going to dive into Kubernetes and the depths of it and becoming the expert that I can be in Kubernetes. And others of us like, I use Kubernetes. I want to know what I need to know, but that's not my thing to be the expert on that. I'm going to kind of be expert maybe to a reasonable degree on multiple things, or maybe pursue something else. So we each have our own interests, right? And I know there's times that like, I want to go learn that, and then I move on to the next thing. And the reason why I bring this up is I think one of the cool things about platform engineering is that it's not just a tool or a set of tools, it's an evolving set of tools. We might use Docker and Kubernetes for a long time, but we also will be introducing new stuff. We've already mentioned, DAG, you were talking about earlier, Brian, and new tools that come along and we want to wrap into. And of course, that's what talks at PlatformCon are about, right? To hear about those new things, what people are working on, and solving some of the toil problems like configuration drift, things that we all combat and battle for a long time. So, but that's what keeps it interesting, I think, and exciting for all of us. I'm curious, we're all experienced here, right? We've been doing this kind of work for a while. What do you think are some of the positive advancements or improvements that we've made through this focus on platform engineering in a relatively short time? It's not like we've called it platform engineering for 20 years. We may have been doing some of those things, but what do you see as some advancements or improvements? Susa, do you want to start first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think a first great improvement is that the idea is spreading. So it's trending, it's a hot topic. We talk about it. It even has a conference now with PlatformCon. So I think that's a great first step. And that also then the next step is logically putting things into practice, which comes with trial and error. And I think having that discussion going on, that experimentation on how to implement things, on like agreeing on that working definition that we talked about initially, like this wave of interest and experimentation, I think is great to see, and a great first step. And I think we're on the right path there as a community.
Very good. Jump in, folks.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe this is tongue in cheek, but the centralization around YAML is actually, I know a lot of people have visceral reactions when you say YAML, but like just by making a decision that, okay, this is how DevOps tooling will be built around. And I know like HashiCorp has their own HCL, but like now we can sort of centralize our tooling around similar structures. It's easier to sort of pick and choose across ecosystems. So yeah, as Susa was just mentioning, like this decisions have been made. We can either choose to build the next new thing, or we could use whatever the base layer, which is, for me, it's YAML. And then as long as I have a consistent thing I can go back to, I can build on top of that, and it's predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also would like to, sort of add a few more points over here on top of what Susan and Brian has said, right? With increment in adaptivity of platform engineering or platform as a culture, right? We have been doing a lot more experimentations around tooling than what we were doing before. So now, with the available number of case studies that we do have on a daily basis, right? I can, check out for my use case, or maybe someone can check out what we are doing over here through the means of this conference, right? That we can see. So as far as platform engineering is considered, knowledge is spreading at a really, fast pace. And this will not only help us out to solve our problems, but it will also create a reflection to other people on how challenges can be taken up and solved at a large scale.
One thing I want to kind of bring back up that I mentioned earlier is the fact that we're focusing this on as a discipline and kind of getting back to the productivity, efficiency, flow, helping people who are creating software be able to spend time doing what they're doing. That, to me, in and of itself, is a positive, huge step. And sometimes having too many options is actually a disadvantage, because now you can spend all your time figuring out the right way to do it, or what way you want to do it and how to make it work, versus just kind of picking up like, okay, we're doing it that way. Great. I can do it that way. And maybe I'll help make it better later, or I'll just, crank on with my job now. But I think that just having it as a discipline and a focus, and the fact that, you all independently say, well, I'm focused on developer experience or developer productivity. And that tells me we're working on some good things, some people who can appreciate having that help. So it's awesome. I'd like to dig in a little bit more about your talks. Jay, maybe you could just give us a little bit deeper, kind of richer what you're talking about. But I'm also curious why you chose that as what you want to talk about.
Definitely, sure. Yeah. As I've mentioned earlier, right, I am working for the team which manages the API gateway at Razorpay. I'll be speaking for the topic Edge at Razorpay, which is the API gateway for DDoS protected high skill environment. Being one of the leading API gateway or payment gateway, payment gateway for the country, it is important for us to ensure availability, and also that should not hamper the scalability of the product that we are serving over here to the customers, right? So that comes up as its own sets of challenges, right? So API gateway being a commonly used tool for API management, right? But the reason is the customizations or the learnings that we did faced, or the challenges that we faced while like building API gateway and our own set of custom tooling on whatever the available solutions are. That is the major reason to like pick this topic up, to share our learnings and also to get feedback upon like what improvements are there that can be taken up, which can help us in our future use cases also, right? On top of it, like there have been several challenges also that we have like sort of conquered or achieved with the talk that I'm trying to present over here. So yeah, looking forward to that.
API security, API gateway is all a huge important topic. Susa, how about you? I want to hear more about so what would cause you to get to the front of the keyboard and say, yeah, I gotta talk about configuration drift.
Yeah, just because it turns out to be a problem that a lot of developers struggle with. So maybe it's helpful to clarify what I mean by configuration drift, because it is also one of these buzzwords that can mean a lot of different things depending on your context. So I'm talking about configuration drift between environments that run on different platforms. So what I mentioned before, you might be using Docker Compose locally and then deploying to a remote environment that runs on an orchestrator like Kubernetes, for example. And the problem here, again, is to keep configuration in sync across these tools. So what I mentioned before as well, making sure that the right values are injected, but also that, for example, resource dependencies are provisioned in the right way. So dependency on a Postgres database is resolved differently locally with Docker compared to Kubernetes, where you might rely on a tool like Terraform, for example. And that's what kind of causes the risk of translation gaps, essentially, so that configuration changes essentially don't make it to that next environment that runs on another tool. So working with different environments that run on different platforms is kind of the problem space I'm diving into as part of my talk. And then against the background of that, do I want to introduce SCORE, this open source project that essentially tries to provide an answer to that problem by essentially introducing a workload specification file that lives with your workload. It's platform agnostic, it's environment agnostic, and thereby allows you to kind of generate the configuration you need without being so involved with that exact environment your workload runs on or that exact tooling that runs underneath. So I don't want to get into monologuing here, but that's the grand idea. And I mean, I chose the topic because I just think it's a problem that affects a lot of developers and teams struggle with it. I also think it's highly relevant for the platform engineering community, simply because it ties directly into the discussions that we're having, right, around configuration management and self-service when it comes to resource provisioning. So I think that's why it's just super interesting to discuss it with that kind of audience. And then lastly, adopting SCORE, or essentially eliminating config drift, is, in my opinion, only possible if you have that platform engineering mindset in place already. So there's like that work that has to be done initially. You can't just download SCORE and you're good to go. As always, there's just like a lot of work that has to be done inside of that.
Yeah, no, I'll mention my talk, which is repeatable release management. Started my career as a full stack developer and increasingly became more of a front end developer more and more as the years gone by. So we, in open source, we have a build system that we use at every single project. So repeatable builds, and every time we start a new project, we have the same build system that's built on top of GitHub Actions to produce a tarball or a zip for us to go host and deploy other places. So whether it's a server-side project or npm package or just a static website. We have the same build system that we were able to reproduce and reuse. And because of time, I didn't actually go into detail on all the ins and outs of the tool, but everything that we've done is open source and viewable within our GitHub repo.
Fantastic. What's great is all of you are very passionate about what you're talking about, that makes it easy to have a talk. So just a heads up, I'm going to ask each of you if there's a topic or a set of talks that you're really you've previewed and on the agenda, really interested in checking out. So before you do that, just kind of with the organizers of the event, Carolina and other folks, the ones that kind of stood out, jumped out to me, just to name a few. So, some of the things that are happening. There's a talk on platform as code, simplifying developer productivity design with reference architectures, coming from a couple of folks from McKinsey, a person for Gartner. I'm going to not mention names because I'll butcher their names, but how to communicate the business value of platform engineering. Hey, how to get funding, AKA. That'd be my interpretation of that. I talk about building the perfect platform in the midst of everything else. I talk about the journey into internal developer platform. So these are all people who have gone through or going through this process of implementing platform engineering. There's also a couple of other interesting talks. DevX, developer experiences, not DevOps. Investing in developer enablement to reduce barriers to continuous delivery. Again, I think this is kind of on that theme of getting back to developer productivity, which is another talk, DevX, what exactly drives productivity from companies, Build.com and DX, a bunch of companies, Nesto, to name a few. So I thought I really liked those that we picked out because it's talking about what it's about to create the developer and platform engineering environment to support your developers, and also what we mean by developer productivity and experience. Brian, any thoughts, any particular topics, or you're like, I'm going as a speaker, but I'm going to learn a bunch of stuff. And there's a couple.
Yeah, that's the fun part is like when you're a speaker, you focus on your talk until it's done, and then you get to relax. So the beauty of pre-recording all these talks is that I can actually relax from the start. But at the current, we're a team of currently 4 at Open Sauce. So this conference is remote. So everything about culture and working with remote teams and handoff and information sharing, that's the track that I'll probably spend the most of my time with. Because I want to be able to grow and scale a team and folks in different time zones. And I think what's the beauty of this is it doesn't matter what time zone you're in, as long as we overlap sometimes in our asynchronous meetings, with our synchronous meetings, but how do you build a really strong asynchronous culture is stuff that I'll be looking for on the schedule.
It can be tough to get going, but once you get it going, man, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Great topic. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to some of the use cases that you have mentioned, right? How platform engineering is evolving as a culture, how different teams are using platform engineering in their org, and what all changed from the last year, or what are the new advancements that has been going on, right? Ensuring all the perspectives that are there in platform engineering. So as Brian mentioned, right, now that we have pre-recorded and submitted the talk, it would be good for us to focus on all the talks that are being scheduled for the topic, and also we would like to connect with the folks over there at the community, so can learn and share my learnings also over there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Susa.
Yeah, I'm excited for all of it. It was super fun last year to just have the stream open on the side and click through individual talks. I think I'm going to keep a close eye on the cultures and stories track. Just from a product management perspective, I find it super interesting to hear more about hands-on experience report and real life use cases. I feel specifically when you're involved more of the theoretical side of things, you talk about definition and concepts and ideas. It's actually super interesting to hear how things play out on the ground, and hearing about real life pain points and success stories. It's a good reality check, and of course a learning experience also for me.
Excellent. I just, in addition to the sessions that I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I always enjoy is the new people you meet. you've not heard from before, you get to connect with. And I don't know if I can meet all 7,000 plus. I can't, but if I could, I would. But there's so many great people that more people you learn from, connect with, say, hey, I have that problem. Let's talk a little bit. I want to find out more about what you're doing there. It kind of enriches our work, and just as a whole nother resource for us to learn from each other, grow, and share with each other. So it's a way of giving back as well as getting so much from it. So, well, thanks to all three of you for spending this time. Most importantly, thanks for your talks and the topics and the commitment to do that, to share with everybody else at PlatformCon. It's been a real pleasure talking with our global audience here. We were talking before, kind of represented by several places around the world just with this team. So I'll just close by saying to folks, whether you're new to platform engineering, or maybe you're trying to build it from scratch, or you want to go find out what folks are doing, how can I kind of accelerate my adoption of platform engineering? There's so many reasons why you might attend PlatformCon, but please check it out. The event again is on June 8th and 9th. And you can go to register at platformcon.com/register. In this video, in the description, we'll also put a link to a nice Gartner article about the top 10 strategic technology trends for 23, talking a little bit about some topics relevant to platform engineering. So thanks to all three of you. Look forward to your talks. Can't wait to dive in and hear more about it. And we'll see everyone else there. Thank you, everybody.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for everyone, to everyone who joined this warm-up event. I'll repeat once again, you can ask questions, and I see there were some questions from Ashu and a couple of questions on the YouTube channel. We will pass it all over to the speakers of this fireside chat warm-up event, to our Slack platform engineering community. So I just shared the link once again with everyone. Please join in, and you'll see all of the questions listed, plus the answers, since we'll tag speakers on those questions, and we'll have them answered today or tomorrow. Other than that, I hope you guys registered for PlatformCon already. If you haven't, please go in and register now. It's going to be a really cool event for platform engineering community, to celebrate platform engineering community. So hope you can attend. We also are hosting a lot of satellites events, in-person events, PlatformCon watch parties in San Francisco, in Austin, in London, in Barcelona. So if you are in any of the cities, register and meet platform engineering community over there as well. Other than that, we'll host more events like this before PlatformCon itself. So stay tuned. We'll send over the follow-up email with this replay if you want to share it with your colleagues. But that's it from me today. Hope you enjoyed the stream, and till